Gun control advocates are urging senators not to widen an exemption for Olympic athletes from the federal government's handgun freeze. Those advocates say including a wider range of sport shooters in the exemption would be a risk to public safety. Federal regulations aimed at capping the number of handguns in Canada are now in effect, but businesses can still sell to exempted individuals, including elite sport shooters who compete or coach in handgun events recognized by the International Olympic or Paralympic committees. Joining us now is one of those advocates against the exemption, Ken Price from Danforth Families for Safe Communities. Ken, thank you very much for sitting down with us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So you've argued against the exemption, and your group has said that expanding it would threaten public safety. In your view, how exactly does it threaten public safety?
Well, I think first of all, to clarify, I think we're okay with the exemption as written. What we're concerned about is any amendment that would expand the definition. And really, it's not so much it is kind of the activities related to what today is accepted as sports shooting and the wide variety of guns that are permitted under those activities. And I think it took us a while, but we got comfortable with the scope of, what kinds of handguns would be used or what kinds of handguns would be exempted if the Olympic program went forward. But most of the other sports shooting are less defined, less regulated, not globally recognized in the same way. And we felt there was a lot of risk that loopholes would be exploited to basically undermine the handgun freeze that we had been advocating for.
But do we have any indication of how many gun-related crimes are committed by firearms owners in the sport of sport shooting?
Well, we don't have that kind of data, but what we do know is that there are several guns. There are thousands of guns that are lost and stolen every year. So it's not like a few, it's thousands. And these are from domestic gun owners that are presumably carrying out sports shooting more than, let's say, collectors of older antiquities, right? So it's really the people who've accumulated these new handguns that are losing them, diverting them, or sometimes acting out themselves. So look, we recognize that our position is not going to be agreed to by everyone, but at the same time, we felt this was our experience. It was our experience that a gun that was legally imported into the country was used in Danforth Avenue about over 5 years ago, and that created mayhem and despair for our families. And so we're supportive of the action, which we think is a kind of a compromise to freeze rather than ban handguns and to allow for some exemptions for legitimate sports shooting.
Now, people in sports shooting say that not exempting or not widening the exemption essentially kills the sport because you can't have new entrants into it. If you don't allow for people to be included in the exemption so that they can train and become an Olympic level athlete, we won't ever have that type of athlete ever again. What do you make of that argument?
Well, there are two things I would say. First of all, in terms of the scope of who's affected, I mean, right now we have one Olympic shooter that would qualify in the handgun categories that might be affected, arguably. And most of Canada's shooting tradition actually is in rifle and shotgun, where, trap, skeet, and rifle. So, 80% probably of the athletes we've ever sent to the Olympics are in those categories, and they're unaffected by any discussion we're having here. But having said that, we admire anybody that can achieve Olympic qualification, and we also fully recognize there's going to be a stream and a program that leads to that. That's the very pinnacle, and not very many people get to claim that they're an Olympian, for sure. But I think the law says the Olympic program, and I think what will come after the law is a set of decisions around what kinds of guns they use to train, what their coaching needs will be. Like, all of this will get set later. But that doesn't require an expansion of the ideal or the restriction that we're supporting. And the restriction is, here is the context of sports shooting that should be exempt. Not any sports shooting, not any gun, especially the semi-automatic guns that we've had experience with and are primarily the source of violent activity by criminals. So we felt like, okay, this is understandable as an exemption, fairly specialized guns, a program that still needs to be written and determined, but needs to be contained in these parameters.
Well, Mr. Price, I very much appreciate you coming on the show today to share your perspective. As the debate continues, we'll be sure to have you back on.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.